Hi, and welcome to the Stoned Witches Hour with Chelle and Layla. Every Wednesday at 4:20 a.m., we bring you two ghoulish tales from across the U.S. And this week, double axe murderers go head to head. Listen in as we smoke some kind bud and discuss all the gory details. It's 4:20 a.m., Axe Murderer Night on the Stoned Witches Hour with Chelle and Layla.
Axe murderer time.
Axe murder. It's murdering time. It's episode 5, the episode before my birthday.
It's Layla's birthday axe murder episode.
So February 1st, my birthday. Anyway, so happy episode 5. I'm Layla.
And I'm Chelle.
I've got an axe murderer for you. I've got an axe murderer story for you from west of the Mississippi, a little town, Villisca, Iowa. The Villisca Axe Murders.
And I'm going to talk about a nice little axe murder from the East Coast, Massachusetts, Fall River. You guessed it, Lizzie Borden. Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41.
Hey, before we get into our story, Chelle, what are you snacking on over there? Are those some pretzel crisps?
Nope, no pretzel crisps today. Bacon.
I'm doing tortilla chips today. Not bacon. Guacamole.
Dripping fat.
That would actually go really good with my tortilla chips and guacamole. I would go for some bacon on that. Probably blasphemy, but it sounds delicious.
No, it's fabulous.
Bacon and guacamole? You don't like guacamole. What are you talking about?
I'm talking about bacon and tortilla chips.
Oh, yeah. Bacon, pretty much bacon in anything.
Yeah.
You can even have bacon and chocolate, and that's good stuff.
I've never had that. I don't, would that be good?
Bacon and chocolate? Yes, it is very good. It's the whole salty yumminess of bacon, and then you add in just enough sweetness, not super sweet chocolate, but just enough sweetness and that bite of chocolate. They complement each other really well.
I'd have to try it. Kind of like fried Oreos. I'm not sure how I feel right now about fried Oreos. I've never done it.
Absolute heaven on earth.
Are they really?
Yes, they really are. I mean, fried Oreos, oh my goodness. Savor every bite if you get one. It's that fried dough, pillowy goodness, right, on the outside.
Ooh.
And then inside, enveloped in this fluffy, delicious fried dough sweetness, is a melted, gushy, ooey gooey Oreo cookie.
That sounds so good right now.
Can you tell I've watched too many cooking shows?
Can you tell I'm high and have the munchies?
And have the munchies. Today is the Dueling Axe Murderers, right?
It is the Dueling Axe Murderers.
I'm so excited. This episode comes out the Wednesday before my birthday. How cool is that?
That is cool.
I mean, I'm kind of excited about it. It's fucking awesome.
Doing anything? Do you have any big birthday plans?
I hope so. Not yet.
Because you're in California, you could go camping, and that's so not fair. Who the hell gets to go camping in February on the East Coast?
Last year, I really wanted to do a balloon ride. It didn't work out, though. But,
like a hot air balloon? I actually have been on a hot air balloon before, and it is super awesome, and I really think everybody should do it once. It was a long time ago. I was pregnant for my son when I went, actually, so that is 24 years ago at this point. Yikes. Yeah. So 24 years ago, I get swindled into going into this hot air balloon ride. My father was offered 2 free rides, basically. Made me
Holy
go.
shit, I remember when you did that.
Yeah, I was afraid of heights, and he said he didn't care if I was afraid of heights. I had to get up and go because nobody gets that opportunity. So I was kind of...
It was the Otsinango Festival, right?
It was the Speedy Fest. Yeah, and as scared as I was and as much as I didn't want to do it, I'm super glad I did, and it was super awesome. And if anybody gets the opportunity, go on a hot air balloon, man, it's cool. And you don't realize how many people have pools until you're in a hot air balloon. I'm not kidding, especially in upstate New York. You're just like, wow, all these people have pools. It's not even warm enough in the summer to have a pool. It was amazing.
Yeah, I really want to do something like that. We could go on a whale watch tour. There's all sorts of things that I could do that would be a lot of fun. So looking forward to something. Interestingly enough, though, I was born on a Tuesday.
Ooh.
And February 1st is on a Tuesday. Thought that was kind of cool.
Taco Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday. I love tacos. So here, I'm going to tell you what being born on Tuesday means.
Ooh, okay.
I looked it up. You know, like Monday's child is fair of face. Have you ever heard that poem?
Yes.
Tuesday's child is full of grace, which I get. I don't know what that means. Like, am I supposed to be graceful? Because I am not. Is it the grace of God? Because I don't know about that either. I don't know. But this says the ruling planet is Mars, which symbolizes a fighting spirit, a desire for an independence, and an obsession with winning. That is me. I am an asshole when it comes to being competitive.
I was born on a Saturday. What does that mean?
Okay. This child is born with a task to resolve, modest, slow, and studious, tuned to other worlds and lifetimes. Saturday's child will be wise, professional, practical, strict, and suspicious, with a tendency to put their head through a wall when they want something badly.
Wow. If that isn't like, I don't know, geez.
There's a little more. This is also you. This is also you. Saturday-born people are typical individualists and prefer to be alone, but have great organizational skills.
Ooh, I am so organized.
Yes, you are. You are. That's one of the reasons why you and I have always been a really good team, because where my Aquarius-ass self is not organized, you are.
Wow.
I found out I might not be an Aquarius.
Wait, what?
Have you ever heard of sidereal astrology?
No.
What we know, and I am not an astrologist, so take this all with a little grain of cannabis. What we're familiar with is called the tropical system. Like, for example, what's your sun sign? What's your sunshine, Chelle?
My sunshine.
Sunshine. What's your sun sign, Chelle?
I am a Gemini.
You're a Gemini. I am an Aquarius. However, I might actually be a Capricorn. What I've been discovering, I follow some amazing people on Twitter that are awesome sidereal astrologists. The tropical system follows where the signs were, where the planets and everything were 2,000 years ago. Right. However, because of the wobble of the planet, they move about 1 degree every 72 years or something like that. Again, not a professional. Oh. So you were actually not born under the sign of Gemini because of where things are changed.
Have you met me?
I know. I said the same thing because I'm like, I am so an Aquarius. That fits me so well. And Chelle, your birthday is like May 30th or 31st, right?
May 31st.
All right. May 31st, you're a Taurus. You were actually born under the sign of Taurus because sidereal astrology follows where the signs are right now. If you actually looked up where you were born, not through astrology, but actually astronomy, if you looked up astronomy and saw what sign you were born under, you'd be a Taurus.
Tauruses are not like me.
I didn't think Capricorns were like me either, but then I started reading my chart and it's oddly really accurate. In Aquarius, there's some stuff that didn't quite fit. And in Capricorn, there's some stuff that doesn't quite fit. But when I look at my whole chart on either one, I'm starting to find that the sidereal one actually fits better. It's
really
bugging me because I'm an Aquarius. I so identify as an Aquarius. So it's giving me a little bit of a personal crisis here, an identity crisis.
I don't know. Taurus, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm a closet Taurus.
Maybe we'll have to look into it. But it was interesting, right?
We'll have to do an episode on doing our charts.
Ooh, okay. Maybe we can get someone who does tropical and someone who does sidereal.
That would be interesting.
Oh my gosh, that would be a lot of fun. I would love that.
Like, right now, like, I hear you, but I'm not 100% sold on your thought process.
I felt the exact same way when I started. I thought there's no way I'm a Capricorn, and I still feel very attached to Aquarius, but I'm willing to grow and learn. I'm open-minded. And honestly, it was really interesting to read. It was, as much as I guess maybe that is kind of a goat quality. As much as I'm being stubborn about it, I think it's probably where I'm going to end up. Maybe I am a Capricorn.
Oh no, Taurus. Now, just one more time. What was that way called?
Sidereal. It's spelled like side real. Sidereal.
Okay. I'm gonna have to put a little bit into this.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm very, very intrigued. And
I was so taken aback. Like I can't even process this right now that
you don't have to switch over. Nobody's saying that doesn't have to be, if it doesn't resonate, it doesn't have to work for you, and that's okay. But I love that you're going to kind of look into it, that you're intrigued enough that you're going to check it out.
yeah. And for the love of God, tell me what Taurus qualities I have.
Oh, I could tell ya. Have you ever done, sometimes I'm not going to do it this year because it's a little much, but every once in a while I goof around with my family and I'll call it like my birthday month. I'll be like, yay, it's my birthday month. You have to be nice to me. I mean, I don't really do anything special, but like I like to claim it's a small month. It's very short. So I like to claim the whole thing.
One of my children is like that.
I know which one.
Yeah. It's supposed to be like a national holiday for like 30 days. I don't know.
Yeah, that's me, but I'm the light version of that. I just say it. I don't actually do anything. I do treat myself a little bit, more likely to buy the better.
Oh no, she means it. No. She means it. She means it. She's hardcore about it. It's great. She's wonderful. Love her.
As we discovered when we were going over topics a couple weeks ago, we are both doing axe murderers.
Which is funny because we did not plan that at all. Not at all.
That really shocked me. I was quite interested to see that.
I mean, I think my story is just one of those age-old, everybody's heard it, but no one really knows what really happened even to this day. Lizzie Borden took her axe and she gave her mother 40 whacks, which actually it wasn't a whack. I think it was more like a hack.
Interesting.
But the thing about the rhyme, when she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. She actually didn't give her father 41 whacks, just for the record. She actually gave him 29.
Interesting.
If we're going to be technical.
Well, just a little bit of a teaser. The killer in my story also was just about as wacky. He did about as many whacks. I don't know. For whatever reason, axe murderers seem to be really big on overkill.
Obviously, if you look at the facts, it kind of all arrows point to Lizzie. When push comes to shove, she was actually found not guilty.
Oh, well, let's start at the beginning. I'm going to light a joint because I've heard the poem. I've heard that. I remember jumping rope. Do kids still jump rope? Am I going to date us again if I say?
I don't even think kids jump rope anymore. I really don't.
Well, I used to jump rope to it.
Well, I am ready to talk about the 19th century axe murderer, Lizzie Borden. Was she guilty? Was she not guilty? We don't know. We'll never know. I don't know why we don't know. Well, there was no forensics. That's probably a reason we don't know.
I think that's why there may have been more serial killers and more murders like that back then, because, I mean, unless you basically wrote your name in the victim's blood, they weren't going to know it was you.
Or did it right in front of the cops. Yeah, no, like there were ways to get away with stuff then. And this is going to be like one of those American mysteries forever. Did she? Didn't she? She had a lot of good reason to, but just because you have reason to doesn't make you a murderer. So we'll see what we find out. They were a very wealthy family in Fall River, Massachusetts. This took place in Fall River, Massachusetts. And at the time, late 1800s, about 1890, their family had what would be equivalent today, a $10 million fortune.
Oh, nice.
So they were considered like a prominent family in Fall River. $10 million isn't nothing to blink at, especially when you're talking about 1890. But the father was kind of abusive. Lizzie's mother died when she was young. She did have an older sister, but she was left with her father. Her sister and her were left with her father. Wasn't necessarily a kind man. Think of like Ebenezer Scrooge. Like
it was like that, just cold and uncaring and miserly.
And yes, cold and uncaring and miserly. Exactly. Like they lived in a house that didn't even have a bathroom, but yet were worth like $10 million. Because
wait a minute, when was this? This was the early 1900s, right?
1890.
It was 1890. They had indoor plumbing then, didn't they?
Well, if you wanted to install it, and
I mean,
he
if you
did
had
it.
$10 million, you could get yourself some indoor plumbing.
And that was why she was pissed. She was like, why the fuck don't we have a bathroom? We can afford it. And he's like, we don't need to waste our money on that.
Wait, she didn't have a mom? I thought the poem says she gave her mother 40 whacks or something.
So lo and behold, a stepmother comes into play.
Oh, there's a stepmother. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
So it was actually the stepmother that was murdered.
It doesn't fit into the poem so well, though.
Right. Gave her stepmother 40 whacks. Yeah, no, I don't think that really kind of flows well. But yeah, so he was like very greedy, not greedy per se, but miserly. Did not want to spend any of his money. Had a bunch of it, didn't want to spend it. Now, I actually watched, kind of gearing up for this story, I watched this movie. Very interesting. On Prime, Amazon Prime, good selection. Elizabeth Montgomery, Samantha in Bewitched. Remember her? So in 1975, she was in a Lizzie Borden movie and played Lizzie Borden, which, by the way, she was kind of like a psycho. It was so weird to see Elizabeth Montgomery be like the bad lady.
So the Bewitched mom played Lizzie Borden?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. She didn't do the nose thing, right?
No, she didn't do the nose thing. You know, I watched a couple of things and read back into a couple articles, including on history.com and the Smithsonian magazine website. And there seems to be some accounts of sexual abuse from the father.
Well, how long was it from the time her mom died until he remarried?
Like 15 years.
And how old was she? Do you know?
She was younger when her mother died, and all of her teenage years and early 20s was just her sister, and her dad.
Okay.
Lizzie and her sister still lived at home and were in their mid to upper 30s, which at that time, if you were in your mid 30s, still living at home and unmarried, you were kind of...
You're a spinster.
Yeah.
On the shelf.
You were no longer desirable. These girls really didn't have any other option than to live with their father and their stepmother. You know, it's not like today, you don't just go out and get a job and get an apartment, get your own place.
Right. They didn't have anything.
Dad has a lot of money, reported abuse throughout their lives, whether it be emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. And when Lizzie was in her mid 30s, it kind of came to a head. She got fed up with not living the lifestyle that she thought she should be able to live due to their financial status in the community. She wasn't happy with the fact that part of that choice by her father is kind of what led her down the life to be a spinster.
Yeah, there's got to be a lot of built up resentment there. He basically denied her whole life.
Right. But in the same respect, you cannot have a lot of money and be that tight to the belt and do business the way you do business without pissing off half the town. He was a property owner. So, you know, people didn't pay their rent, they got evicted. You know, you didn't pay your bills, they came after you.
Right.
So, you know, he did have a lot of enemies being a rich upper class person. He was kind of gruff with everybody, not just his children and his family. So he wasn't the most well-liked guy in town either. Just because you're rich doesn't mean people like you.
Right. You can't buy friendship.
Right. So Lizzie wasn't necessarily the only person with a motive. But, you know, some things that really didn't fit well are she was the only one home at the time of the murders. Now, at the time, that was kind of a bustling town for the 1890s. And there were neighbors. There were like, this was a town. And this happened in broad daylight. And she was home. Like, nobody heard anything. Nobody saw anything. Nobody saw anybody break into the house. Nobody saw anybody run away. But nobody heard screaming. Lizzie claimed to not hear screaming. She claimed to be outside in the yard or something. nobody knows. You know, it wasn't the days of like street cameras and all that stuff. It's almost like a he said, she said. She seems to be the only person that had the access.
So what happened?
Well, on a nice, wonderful summer day in August 1892, Lizzie's stepmom was found in the upstairs bedroom, hacked to death. 20-ish axe marks, just hacked to death in her bed.
Wow. Who found her?
Lizzie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So she's also the person who found them. So there's that. And then downstairs on a long couch, I guess we'll call it, is where the father was found. Now, the stepmother was just kind of randomly hacked to death. No rhyme or reason. Whereas the father, he was stabbed or hit with the axe like 29 times or something. And all of them were to his face.
Wow, that's pretty vicious.
So it wasn't like, hacked him in the back, hacked him in the stomach, hacked him in the leg, whatever. Like all the hacks were at his face.
Oof. 29 whacks of an axe to the face.
Somebody was angry. So the theory is that the father was downstairs napping. The stepmother was upstairs. The stepmother was killed first, and then the father was killed second. Supposedly, Lizzie's outside, comes inside, finds the bodies. Here's an interesting piece. Back then, religion was very detrimental to status in Upper New England. And there was a doctor that lived next door, but because he followed a different religious path, Lizzie would not let that doctor come over and actually made her servant go to a doctor across town. People kind of question that and wonder, if your father was just hacked to death, wouldn't you get the nearest doctor?
Not back then, no.
And she wouldn't, because the nearest doctor was
the wrong religion. Yeah.
Was the wrong religion. So, but she had the motive, she had the opportunity, but again, nobody saw anything, nobody heard anything. She could have been outside, someone could have broken, someone else could have done it, but she was very callous to the fact that her father was just hacked to death. You would think that someone would be overwrought with grief. She wasn't necessarily.
Shitty. Why would she be sad that the guy who molested and abused her for decades and prevented her from having a normal life was dead? And besides, it's still stupid to hold someone accountable for how they act after someone died. I mean, right. Everyone reacts to grief very, very differently. Some people completely go stoic. Some people are overwrought and fall down and scream. Some people laugh. Everyone reacts to grief, especially someone that close to you. If she found them hacked like that, who knows if she had been in some type of catatonic or dissociative state or something. I mean, what a horrible thing to say. You didn't show grief the way I wanted you to, so that must mean you're guilty.
But that's 1892 for you.
Well, I think they still do it now, but yeah.
Yeah, but that contributed to why they thought she was guilty. But again, there were other people who hated him. There were other people who had motive.
He was the Scrooge of the town and he had all the money. He must have had a ton of business enemies.
Right. And just because his daughter didn't grieve the way they expected her to doesn't automatically make her guilty.
Right.
Because
they probably would have then. She's a spinster and she didn't show proper grief. Guilty.
And stood to inherit everything.
Well, with her older sister, right?
Correct.
Where was her older sister in all this?
She was like visiting out of town. Couldn't have been her.
Convenient.
There was a servant that also, now here's some interesting side fact for you. So there was a servant, and the servant was supposedly Lizzie's lesbian lover.
Good for her. Got to find happiness where you can.
Some of the stuff you dig up talks about the potential of her assisting with a cover-up. Because, see, now here's some things that kind of make Lizzie look guilty. A day or two after the murders, she all of a sudden had a paint-stained dress that just had to be burned. When you got a stained dress, you burn it, right?
Isn't that how they disposed of garbage though? Like,
Well, yeah, probably, but
also, okay, suspicious. She burned a dirty dress. Pink
burned a
stained.
dirty
Could have been
dress.
blood.
Right. Well, there was a witness that she brushed up against wet paint, but how chicks are. Did she purposefully brush up against wet paint so she'd need to burn a dress so it would cover her ass? Who knows?
Devious. Could be devious. Could be wet paint. We don't know.
Right. It's just interesting that it kind of went down to religion was part of the reason she got not guilty. Being rich was part of the reason she got not guilty. A lot of controversy in the politics of Fall River at the time was part of the reason she was made not guilty.
I don't think she was guilty. I think she was innocent.
She could have been innocent. She could have been innocent because again, there was a lot of people who wanted this guy dead. They had, he was unpopular. He had some shady business dealings. Like I said, he was kind of like a landlord, a big landlord in town, pay your rent or get out, nobody likes that guy.
Right.
But what people didn't realize is in the trial of Lizzie, a lot of his tight-fistedness came out. People thought that he was just that way in business and then realized that he actually treated his family the same way. It was really sad, actually. If she did do it, you might almost see why. But, again, in that time, the lack of any sort of forensic whatever.
Right. Maybe if she did do it, she thought that was her only way out. He had kept her trapped for so long. Maybe she thought that there was no other escape.
Right, right. So they just had not enough to go on, not enough to go on. So Lizzie got away with it essentially, if it was her.
Nope. I say she's innocent. I'm on the Lizzie Borden is innocent crew.
She didn't give a shit what people said. They talked about her, whispered behind her back. She stayed in that town. She lived until she was 69. She stayed there and she just.
So they tried her and found her not guilty. Just the one?
Yeah. Yeah. They even tried to get her for shoplifting in like 1905.
Did she lose all the money?
No, no.
Wow.
She lived
Did she
out her
shack
life
up with her lover?
No, and she became.
Aw.
And here's the weird thing. She did become estranged from her sister, but they ended up dying within days of each other in
Oh, wow.
1927. And then were both buried next to their murdered parents in Oak Grove Cemetery in Fall River.
Dun, dun, dun.
As you can imagine, Lizzie and her sister, whose name is Emma, are said to be there. The parents are said to be there. So it is believed that the whole family is still in the house. You can hear the stepmother screaming upstairs sometimes.
Ooh.
You can stay in the room that she was murdered in.
No.
Yeah. These people died in a tragic way and had a tragic life. Lizzie and her sister had a tragic life. The dad and the stepmom died in a tragic way. The spirits that are trapped in this house or refuse to leave this house, they're sad, they're angry, they're confused.
Now, have people had experiences in the house? Does anyone describe any seances or?
People do. There has been ghost adventures, ghost hunters have all been there. All of your traditional popular ghost hunting TV shows, I guess you'll call them, have all done investigations there. They do hear the spirits. They do see apparitions. It seems like if you're willing to pay the $225 a night it is or so to stay there, that not only are you going to get an interesting place to stay, but you will definitely hear or see something in that house.
Oh, yay. Well, let's add it to our East United States itinerary.
I do want to point out that this part I don't always buy into. I will mention it because it was mentioned in several things I came across. They say there's a lot of activity between 2 and 4 a.m., the witching hour.
The witching hour.
But I definitely believe that if a house is haunted as much as the Lizzie Borden house would appear to be haunted, that you would have those experiences at any time of night. but they do say that there's extreme activity in the middle of the night.
Well, that would make sense. I mean, the witching hour is the witching hour for a reason. I mean, the veil is thinner at that time and energies might be stronger at that point. So if that is a thing, that might be why.
Right, right.
And plus we'll be smoking at 4:20 a.m. So we'll definitely be seeing something.
Maybe in Lizzie Borden's bedroom.
Ooh, or in her lovers.
I mean,
Can we bring a Ouija board to this one, or is that a no-no?
I would.
Where would you most like to use a Ouija board in the Lizzie Borden house?
I think you're onto some. I'd probably do it in Bridget's room, the lover, the
right?
servant.
Let's get some. She had to have seen a lot more than anyone gives any credit to. I mean, the servants see everything. She knew what was going on. And if she was Lizzie's lover, then she had the inside scoop.
She was also an Irish immigrant, and Irish immigrants at that time were looked down on. So she was very much a servant, being an Irish immigrant. So she probably saw a lot of stuff that she was just too afraid to report, talk about, testify against.
Well, she's female and an Irish immigrant, so therefore unimportant. Lizzie
Right.
was an unmarried, overaged female, so she also unimportant. And they were lesbians, so therefore very unimportant and probably evil.
But if the dad was out of the way, Lizzie'd have the money.
That's true.
Which is actually what happened.
Good for her.
So as you can imagine, the family is still home. They haven't left. It's been 100 or so years, and the Bordens are still home every night in Fall River, Massachusetts. Wow. And I say, let's go have a sleepover with them.
Let's do it. What stories those walls have to tell?
And I think that's the interesting part. I believe that houses, buildings, what have you, can kind of absorb that residual energy.
Oh, yeah. We've talked about that before. Places for whatever reason, like the Stanley Hotel with all the courts underneath it, kind of helping to hold that energy there. And
I think that this would be one of those places where, you say, oh, if the walls could talk. I think at this place, I think the walls would talk.
Sayings like that become sayings for a reason.
Right. I think the walls would talk at this place. But you know what? Like I said, it's an active bed and breakfast. I think we need to check it out. People claim to see Lizzie on the regular, and I want to see her too.
I want to ask her too, because I know she didn't do it. I'm totally team innocent.
What if the servant did it and Lizzie covered?
I think I might be on team innocent because of my story of a similar axe murder.
Ooh, do tell.
I think it's really interesting that your murder is so well known that there's a children's rhyme about it that's pretty popular, whereas the murders that I'm covering are very similar, and it's, completely unsolved, very mysterious, but I'd never heard of it before.
Can we just take a moment and talk about the fact that a children's rhyme about an axe murderer? What is wrong with people?
Kids' rhymes are terrible. Well, Ring Around the Rosie is about the plague.
Is it really? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Ring Around a Rosie. It was the way the disease looked on you. It was like a red dot with a ring around it.
Oh.
Pocket Full of Posies was a small bouquet of flowers, and people thought that if you held a bouquet of flowers or sometimes like a sachet of herbs up to your nose and mouth, you could prevent the germs from getting to you. And a little bit they weren't wrong. I mean, masks do work, and they were kind of masking, but not very effectively. So Pocket Full of Posies, ashes, they burned all the bodies to try and prevent the spread of disease. We all fall down. Everyone died.
Wow. I guess when you look at it that way, that's pretty shitty.
Yeah, no, that's really what it was. And so, I mean, a lot of kids' rhymes are really morbid.
I mean, wow.
Yeah, who knew?
How were parents just like, yeah, that's a good one. Keep going.
Rockabye Baby.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Baby
How twisted is that?
Took me a minute. Yeah. Damn. We have a dark history here in America. No wonder there's so many ghost stories. We're twisted.
I am such a helicopter parent. I am the person who changed the last line to Rockabye Baby because I couldn't do it. I changed and down will come baby, cradle and all. I changed it to and mom will catch baby, cradle and all. Because I can't do it. I'm such a marshmallow. I couldn't.
I just rolled with the tried and true.
Well, who thinks about that? Who thinks that Ring Around a Rosie or Rockabye Baby or I mean Lizzie Borden is obviously twisted. It's not hidden in there. That's like more in your face twisted. All right, so I'm lighting another joint. I'm going to smoke this up. Let me see what I'm smoking today. What are you smoking today,
I don't
Chelle?
even know. Let me look. I don't even know. Silver Haze Kush. That's what's on tap for me today. Very tasty, very good. Very much a head high.
Nice. I am smoking some Captain America OG.
Ooh.
Yeah, this is a little bit less expensive, but honestly, this is one of those. You know how when you go to the dispensary and you can pick the super expensive shit and it's sometimes it's great and sometimes it tastes and smokes just like the inexpensive stuff?
Yeah.
Well, I think this Captain America OG is really this is my secret cheap weed. It's really not that expensive. Like ounces out here can go for $350, $400 for the good stuff. This one squeaks by at $150 an ounce, depending on when I get it. And it's a local grower. And damn, it's fire. I love this stuff so much. It's a sativa. It's got a great flavor, great high. When I want to save a little bit of money, which is all the time,
Right.
but still get good shit, I love this Captain America OG. It's good stuff.
That sounds delicious.
It really is. All right, so I'm going to get a little high.
Tell me about your axe murderer.
So it was the summer, June, just like yours, summer of 1912 in a little town of Villisca, Iowa. This is a small town of less than 2,000 people. Everyone knew everybody else. I mean, all the neighbors knew each other pretty much by sight. And then they took care of each other. They watched out for each other. In this town, Josiah and Sarah Moore was a young couple, and Josiah had been a businessman, and much like in your story, he had built up his fortune.
Do rich people always get axed to death? Is that the theme here?
Maybe. I wouldn't say he was rich, but he was definitely well off. So, Josiah and Sarah Moore, young parents, they had 4 children. Herman, who was 11, Catherine, 10, Boyd, who was 7, and little Paul was 5. Well respected in the town, they had a little farm there, and in the beginning of June, they were helping out as their local Presbyterian church was hosting a Children's Day service. Sarah Moore was one of the co-coordinators of this event. Her children and the children of the town performed little speeches and little plays and recitations, and it was just a great all-day event. There was food and everyone having a good time, just kind of hanging out, celebrating Children's Day. So at the end of the day, 2 children, Ina Mae Stillinger, 8 years old, and Lena Gertrude Stillinger, 12, who were friends of the Moore's daughter, Catherine. They asked if they could spend the night at the Moore's house, and their parents gave them permission. And the Stillinger girls and the Moore family walked the 3 blocks from the center of town to their little house, and no one ever saw them alive again.
The kids even too?
The kids too. So it was about 9:30 p.m. when the family got home, and since it was so late and they'd had such a big day, they had a fun little dinner of milk and cookies. The 2 guests, Ina and Lena, went to sleep in the guest bedroom on the first floor. Now, this is a really small house. So it was just like a main room in the kitchen and then a small guest bedroom. And the 2 little girls went to sleep there. And then the family went upstairs to the 2 bedrooms. The 4 more children went to sleep in their room. And Josiah and Sarah went to sleep in their bedroom. While the family had been enjoying the church's Children's Day events, someone else was slipping through the unlocked front door of the family's house and then going up the stairs unnoticed to the attic where they lay in wait all day.
Oh, so they were targeted then.
They think so. They found 2 cigarettes, so they know that the killer hid there, smoking 2 cigarettes as the family had their late night milk and cookies. And then he waited while they all went to sleep.
Were they robbed?
No.
They didn't take anything?
So what they determined happened was sometime after midnight, the killer took an oil lamp from one of the dressers and took that glass cover, you know, the chimney off of it and set it underneath a chair so it wouldn't be in the way. Then he turned the wick down really far and bent it over so it was very, very small. So he had this oil lamp with just a teeny tiny light as he moved through the house.
Oh.
So it's casting this faintest glimmer as he's walking through the sleeping house. And he goes first to the master bedroom where Josiah and Sarah are sleeping. And he has this axe that he must have taken from the shed outside, Josiah's axe. And he swings this axe with the blade down, crashing into Josiah Moore's head, crushing him and probably killing him instantly, before turning the back of the axe, again, a single blow, killing Sarah Moore in her bed before she had time to wake up.
That's shitty.
The killer then went to the bedroom next door and killed all 4 children similarly in their beds, bashing them with the blunt end of the axe until they were dead.
That's horrible.
He went downstairs to the guest bedroom where little Lena and Ina are sleeping, and he killed Ina instantly in her sleep. And they think possibly Lena was the only one who may have woken up because she was found crosswise on the bed. Everyone else was found curled up asleep and probably died instantly. But Lena was found kind of across the bed outside of the covers with her arm up over her head. And she's the only one who had defensive wounds on her.
Oh, wow.
Now, the coroner said that there was no sexual assault of anyone, including Lena, even though she was found without underpants and her nightgown had been pushed up to her chest. And she did have defensive wounds and blood on her knees, but the coroner said no sexual assault had taken place, even though other outlets said it had. So that's one of those things that maybe did, maybe didn't.
Yeah.
So she was probably the only one who was awake.
Oh, wow.
After he killed everyone, the axeman went back upstairs and, taking his axe, reduced the heads of Joe and Sarah to pulp. He swung the axe so many times and with such force that there are blade marks in the ceiling.
Like, why was he so angry?
He struck Joe alone an estimated 30 times in the head and left all 6 members of the family unrecognizable.
That is somebody who is really, really mad. That is not a random, I'm just going to swing by these people's house and kill them kind of thing. Like, what did he do to piss this guy off?
Joe was the only one on which he used the bladed side of the axe. Everyone else, it was only the blunt side. And interestingly, some of the axe marks in the ceiling weren't anywhere near where the bodies were found. They think maybe he, in a fit of rage or excitement, maybe had been swinging the axe just wildly in random places. Then it gets a little stranger. After completely going through and bludgeoning these already dead people until they were unrecognizable, the killer rummaged through their drawers and took out clothes and blankets and covered all their heads. So he pulled the sheets and blankets up over Joe and Sarah, and he put t-shirts and dresses over the children's faces.
That's weird.
He then, in some sort of ritualistic manner, went through the whole house and covered all the windows, all the mirrors, and any reflective surface with clothing or blankets. Then he cooked himself dinner in their kitchen and left it uneaten on the table, on the kitchen table, next to a bowl of water that had blood and gore in it, like he had washed his hands in the bowl of water. Also, in the guest bedroom, he left the murder weapon, the bloody axe, leaning up against the wall, next to a 2-pound slab of uncooked bacon that he had taken from the icebox, wrapped it in a towel, and then just left it there next to the murder weapon.
Was this guy mental?
Well, nobody knows who did it. He then took the keys of the house, locked the doors, and left before dawn. The next morning, one of the neighbors, Mary Peckham, was out, the local busybody. She's out doing her laundry in the morning and doing her chores. And those lazy Moors, they're over there doing nothing, not doing their laundry. There's no smoke coming out of the chimney. Their horse is restless in the barn. She doesn't see any sign or sight of them. And she normally does by 7 a.m. in the morning. So she's a little suspicious and goes over to the house and discovers that the windows are covered and the front door's locked. Again, very unusual for the town. Nobody ever locked their doors here.
Still a nosy neighbor.
Right? Absolutely nosy neighbor. Goes to peek in the windows and can't. So she's like, well, can't have this. So she calls Ross Moore, Josiah's brother. He comes over about a half an hour later and he has a spare key. He opens the front door and lets himself in. And because the house is so small, he's able to see the guest bedroom. Promptly shuts the door, turns around, and throws up, completely white as a sheet. So he doesn't go any further, and he calls Villisca's Marshal Hank Horton. So Hank comes along and he brings a couple doctors and Wesley Ewing, the minister of the Presbyterian congregation. Same thing in this town, like the Methodists and the Presbyterians were not happy with each other.
Right.
So they bring the minister, some doctors, the county coroner comes, and another Dr. F.S. Williams, who's actually the first person to examine the bodies and give an estimated time of death. So Dr. Williams goes in and examines the scene. And when he comes out, there's more and more townspeople are coming because they've heard of this horrible scene. He comes out looking visibly shaken. And he says, and this is quoted in a lot of newspapers, "Don't go in there, boys. You'll regret it until the last day of your life."
Oh, wow.
That didn't stop anyone at this crime scene where 8 people, 6 children were brutally murdered. It becomes almost like a macabre carnival. Over 100 townspeople trooped through up and down the stairs, through all the bedrooms. Townspeople picked up the murder weapon, the axe, and took turns swinging it.
Oh my God.
Like a baseball bat.
Oh my God. Imagine doing that at a crime scene today.
Absolutely not. Some of these sick bastards even took pieces of Josiah Moore's skull as keepsakes.
Oh my God.
After over 100 random people trooped through, you can imagine there's no physical evidence to be found. There's not going to be any fingerprints, any hairs or fibers or anything that they might have picked up in 1912 is now irrevocably lost or damaged or corrupted.
Wow. And ironically enough, that was the same year as the Titanic. Bad year.
That apparently you've said that before. That apparently was a very bad year.
It is very interesting though about how, back in 1912, everybody in town could just traipse through a crime scene. Whereas today, holy mackerel, you can't even fathom that thought.
I think that's why a lot of these things went unsolved, is because they didn't keep things pure or pristine. Maybe there would have been some sort of evidence that they could find. I mean, this guy left a lot of things, including not only did he wrap that bacon in a blanket and leave it next to the murder weapon. Oh my gosh, my foster cat is playing with everything. Dude, they did find a part of a keychain there that was discovered not to be the Stillinger or the Moore families. So that could have been, was it from the killer? Was it from one of the people that were trooping through the house? They don't know.
Well, they didn't have the same technology though. So even if they did have that stuff, they wouldn't have had any way to do anything with it.
Well, they could still I think they could do fingerprints at that time. We'll have to find that out. They could.
I don't know.
But if any belongings had been dropped, if any items had been dropped, I mean, I know they were collecting evidence and things at that time. So they should have been able to find something like that. There were a couple suspects. There are actually quite a few suspects, and none of them really ever seemed to pan out.
Lack of evidence?
A lack of evidence. But to someone to kill children, you would think that, I mean, one of the suspects was a business rival, the man that Josiah Moore had worked for and then set up a competing business, stealing half of his clients to take with him to start this competing business. They hated each other. In this small town, they would go across the street to avoid walking next to each other, which was that's huge shade back in the day.
Yeah, but kill each other, man. Don't kill the kids.
Right. Even if he hired someone to kill him, would he have really hired someone to kill all those kids too? It doesn't really add up. They think he possibly hired a man named William Mansfield to murder Josiah because of the humiliation of stealing his business.
Oh.
Mansfield was plausible as a suspect because in 1914, this happened in 1912. Anyway, in 1914, Mansfield was the chief suspect in killing his wife, her parents, and his own child in Illinois.
But one thing you got to remember, whether it's in the early 1900s or the mid or the late 1900s or the early 2000s, you got a guy that is willing to be a murder for hire guy. Dude ain't unstable to begin with. The guy is crazy enough that if you give him money, he'll just go kill random people. So maybe he had no qualms killing the 4 kids.
It's possible, and it does certainly sound like he had the temperament for it. However, he had a rock-solid alibi for the night of the murders.
Oh.
That didn't stop people from thinking that it was still possible. Everybody loves the whole revenge story.
Well, that's why I was wondering if it had to do with money, because, a lot of people back then would kill anybody for money.
It's
realistically.
possible. It's very possible, but it just doesn't seem, again, very plausible. Another person who was actually tried, who actually confessed to doing it and then later recanted, was a preacher named Lynn George Jacqueline Kelly. He was a known sexual deviant with known mental health issues. And the first time he was ever in Villisca was the morning of the children's, oh shit, what was that called?
Pageant.
Was the morning of the Children's Day event, the night of which the Moore family was killed. So he shows up for that day and attends Sarah Moore's preschool
And essentially as a pedophile.
services. And essentially, yeah, he's a known mentally ill sexual deviant.
And you said there was question on whether they were sexually assaulted, correct?
It was, the coroner said it did not happen. Newspaper outlets said it did. The only evidence that they quoted was the blood on her legs and that her night dress was pushed up. Did the coroner say she wasn't sexually assaulted to spare the family some pain? And she actually was? Or maybe she wasn't and she was just happened to try to move to get away from the killer, and that's just how it happened.
Right.
He was found not guilty. And there was a lot of stuff about him. Like the coroner determined that the killer was probably left-handed due to the nature of the marks in the ceiling and the wounds on the people. And this preacher was left-handed. However, the preacher was only 5'2", my height. We're short people. Even a long axe, there was no way he was going to be able to hit the ceiling with that axe unless he was standing on something.
Oh, okay. So it didn't fit with his physical profile.
Correct. Also during that time, there were other axe murders that happened. You just told us about one. And they had a lot of similar qualities. People being asleep in bed and hit excessively in the head multiple times. Some other murders in other states around that time, the axe murderer killed them in their sleep in their beds, covered their heads with blankets, and covered windows with blankets. That also seems to be a common theme. And one of the things that they found for this murder was in the barn outside of the Moore's house. There was a depression in the hay bales against the wall facing the house, and one of the knot holes had been pushed out. So it looks like possibly someone had made themselves a cozy little spot there to spy on the house, either in the days leading up to the murder or the day of the murder.
So the predator, the sexual predator, actually kind of fits the bill a little more, it seems.
Well, he fits the bill, but he was at the Children's Day events, so he couldn't have been holed up in their barn or up in the attic waiting for them. And also, he was too short to have made the marks in the ceiling. And if he was a known sexual deviant, and it's true that no one was sexually molested, then he really doesn't fit. So there was a train station that went right through the town. So it's possible that someone could have jumped on the train, saw the girls at the house and spent the day in the barn watching them, went up into the attic when they left to go to the Children's Day festivities and smoked a couple cigarettes while he waited for them to come back and fall asleep, and then brutally murdered them before hopping a train before dawn.
You know, a lot of crazy people fell into the cracks back then, and it could have really just been that simple.
It very well could have. Occam's razor and all that. But I think with so many different axe murders happening very similarly within a 20-year time frame around that time, maybe the railroad is common theme. Maybe it was someone that was hopping a railroad and just randomly killing people.
Right, because the railroad did go through Fall River. Again, I mean, Lizzie...
No way. The railroad went through the Fall River town where the Lizzie Borden?
Yeah.
No shit.
It's a coastal town, you know, they take stuff off the boats and then rail it to wherever.
Well, now I am even more firmly in the camp of Lizzie Borden didn't do it. And I think a railway transient serial killer did both of these. Maybe not the same one. I mean, there is like 22 years between them, but something similar.
But you're right, though. You know, there was easier ways to get away with stuff back then. What better environment to literally get away with murder?
Good point. And on that note, thank you all so much for listening.
All of our tens of users, we love you so much.
We love you and appreciate you all so much. I'm having so much fun with this podcast. I mean, who doesn't love an excuse to smoke good weed?
Right?
Not that I need an excuse, but please like, subscribe, and review our podcast on whatever forum you listen. We appreciate you. We are so thankful for all of you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us. And
Thanks for hanging out with us while we get high and talk about apparently crazy axe murderers.
how fun was that?
Right?
So which one is spookier? Who did it? Did Lizzie Borden do it? Was it an axe murderer? Were the Villisca murders carried out by the creepy preacher?
Or was it a train transient?
Was it the train transient murderer? The Axeman of the trains. You decide. Let us know.
I'm starting to agree. I'll give credit where credit's due. I'm starting to get a little intrigued by some of these hauntings and paranormal stories from the West Coast. I didn't think there was as many as there are. So I'm excited to see what other things you're going to dig up and talk about with us.
I love that because I mean we grew up amongst the East Coast stories. They're ingrained. It's soaked into our skin, and so that's why it's so good to get out of your comfort zone. I came out here to the West Coast, experience all new things. Well, I always love tacos, but experience all new things and all these new stories. And I know you love new stuff, so it's very exciting to kind of bring stories that maybe not new to everyone, but are new to us. It's kind of fun.
Now, what were you thinking of potentially talking about on our next episode?
Well, you, being the organized one, told me that you had your research list numbered, and I don't. I have a research list, but it's just all sorts of topics I'm interested in or have been recommended to me, just kind of all in a document. So if I just go by what's on top, Alcatraz is next.
Ooh, Alcatraz.
Alcatraz Island.
That is some place that's always been intriguing because some of the worst have been there. I understand the whole shark infestation, but I just never have understood why people just can't swim to safety.
But yeah, so Alcatraz Island is going to be my topic for our next podcast.
Interesting. I'd almost forgot one. I'm organized, got my list, try to keep things in order. I actually skipped over one, which is so unlike me. I wanted to talk about the Amityville Horror House. Again, another creepy horror movie from our childhood. A book was written about the Amityville Horror House. This is a actual house in Amityville, New York. And I think that kind of like what we talked with The Exorcist, this is one of those things that there is a truth behind the book. There is a truth behind the movie. And it's a little unsettling. It's a little unsettling. This is one of those places where you cannot spend the night, and I'd give anything to spend the night.
I drove by there once.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Did you get that feeling when you drove by?
Okay, here's the thing. I'm not 100% sure if the feeling was like a psychic vibe or I've heard all about you and your creepy vibe. I honestly am not sure which one it was. I'd have to go again to see. And we just drove by. It's not like I stopped or anything.
You might have been tainted by what you already knew.
Right. I cannot 100% say that the area has a creepy vibe. The house looks creepy. I mean, those windows are creepy.
I see a house down the street from me with those windows and I'm creeped out.
Right? Exactly. So I don't know if it's just that the known history of the house made me feel that creepy vibe, or if I felt it from the place and I literally wasn't long enough there to analyze it.
Gotcha. Well, we're gonna chat a little bit about it, see what we find about some things that have happened since the book was written, since the movie was filmed.
Oh, I'm excited.
It's definitely some paranormal stuff going on. A lot of people don't necessarily believe in paranormal stuff. This is one of those stories that kind of makes non-believers believers. This is one of those houses that could very well be on those lists of a portal to hell.
Ooh, another portal to hell.
Yeah.
Why does the East Coast have so many portals to hell? I was led to believe by Buffy the Vampire Slayer that the portal to hell was in Sunnyvale, California.
They're like elevators in a hotel. There's elevators everywhere, and the East Coast just has a lot of elevators, I guess.
I guess so. A lot of portals. Who's making these portals and why? Do they go both ways? Do they go? I have questions.
I don't know, but there should be a portal to Big Buds and milkshakes.
I would go. I would go. That's probably why there's no portals, is because no one would still be here. We'd all
Right?
be in the land of big buds and milkshakes. Thanks for listening to episode 5 of the Stoned Witches Hour with Chelle and Laylla. Tune in next Wednesday for episode 6 when we talk about Alcatraz and the Amityville Horror House. See you next time on the Stoned Witches Hour.